Welcome back, casual gardeners. Why do we grow potatoes from seed potatoes and not from potato seeds? I used to think there was a simple answer. I used to think it was just about hybridization and the fact that if you cross your potatoes, you're not going to know what kind of potato you're going to get out the other end. But it turns out it's more complicated than that. And yet, despite those complications, this year I am growing potatoes from potato seeds and not from seed potatoes. Why would I want to do that? What, if any, are the benefits of doing that? And why, if it's not just about hybridization, do so few other people do that? There are a lot of questions potentially to answer. And we're going to see how many of those questions I can answer in the time we've got together today. It is a good thing that I have this topic to talk about today because, as you can see, I'm not doing any gardening today. It's just crappy and snowy and cold. Right now, the temperature outside the greenhouse is a chilly 39 degrees Fahrenheit, while inside the greenhouse, it is a quite comfortable 62 degrees Fahrenheit. And remember, this is not a heated greenhouse, and it is a pretty overcast day, as you can probably tell from the lighting. So as I mentioned earlier, I used to think that the reason we would grow potatoes from seed potatoes is just because that way it's essentially a clone of the parents. So we know if we plant Idaho russet seed potatoes, we're going to get Idaho russet potatoes out the other end. But if we were to collect seeds from a potato plant and plant them, you don't know what you're going to get. Those are genetically distinct. They're not clones. And I thought that was the whole reason why people didn't want to do it. Because if you're going to put all that effort into growing some food, you like to know what your food's going to be like. And that would be sufficient reason if it were the reason. But it turns out it's not. We actually often cannot grow potatoes from seed anymore. A lot of the potato varieties out there won't produce viable seed. I'm not going to say it's 100% none of them, but a lot of them won't. I can sum it up with one word: polyploidy. It's fun to say, but probably for most of you in the audience is not gonna mean anything, and that's okay. And maybe together we can get to a point where it means a little bit to you. If we just smushed a couple of regular cells together, the offspring would have twice as much DNA as its parents. Plants and animals both use a mechanism to reduce the number of copies of chromosomes in their offspring. They do a special kind of cell division called meiosis. Now, when we smoosh them together, we're going to have the same amount of chromosomes as the parent. In both plants and animals, meiosis can go wrong. And then when you smoosh together, you end up with 2 copies from mom or dad and 1 copy from dad or mom. And you are what we call triploid. In an animal, you're dead. You can't do it. But in a plant, you can actually live as a triploid. You can't reproduce sexually anymore. You can only reproduce asexually. If you have extra copies of chromosomes, you get to make more stuff in your cells. It takes more energy to copy those chromosomes, so you might struggle a little bit more to grow. Each cell has more of the stuff it needs to grow and survive and live. And because of that, our strawberries are bigger. When we get those giant strawberries, that is a thing called polyploidy. We've got extra chromosomes in there. And you might have noticed our potatoes are a lot bigger than wild potatoes too. That's because they are polyploid as well. Our potatoes have extra copies of stuff from mom or dad or both, and it can't do sexual reproduction anymore, or at least maybe not as efficiently. This little guy that I'm growing from seed is more close genetically to the wild type potatoes. And that means that when I planted the seed for this little plant, it was able to grow and give me a new plant. And that's not something that many modern domestic potato varieties can do. If you're curious and you want to try growing potatoes from seed, you can I got these seeds from Botanical Interests, which is, of course, owned by Kevin at Epic Gardening. There are some drawbacks to growing potatoes from seed. One of the drawbacks is that you're more likely to get potatoes, like the actual tubers, that are bitter. Domestic potatoes have undergone more selective breeding, and along with their polyploidy that makes them big and more worthwhile to peel, they also have had the bitterness bred out of them. A lot of the diploid or wild type potatoes are going to still have that tendency to produce more bitter nightshady potatoes. So that's something I'm looking forward to finding out from my little seedlings. I'll have to let you know in a few months when I get my potato harvest. What are they like? We will find out. Another downside of genetically normal potato plants is that they're actually going to be a little bit less adaptive to new environments. Polyploid plants tend to deal better with drought stress and heat stress and cold stress because they have extra copies of all of their chromosomes. They've just got more tools in their toolkits. Whereas little diploid or wild type potatoes, they're going to be more adapted to a more narrow range of moisture and temperature and light and all of those things. They're not going to be as able to adapt because they don't have that Swiss Army knife of extra chromosomes in their cells to help them deal with whatever situations they come up against. And then, of course, finally, I'm going to get smaller potatoes. Hopefully they'll have some pretty thin skin because they're going to be small enough. I don't want to peel them. I'm going to lose too much potato if I peel them. So if you like the big russet style potatoes, growing potatoes from seed is not going to be for you. But otherwise, it is going to work exactly like growing potatoes from seed potatoes when you grow potatoes from seed. You're still going to want to hill them up as they grow, and you're still going to want to wait for the plant to kind of die back before you go in and find out what you got. If you get potatoes from your seed-grown potato plant that you really, really love and you want to know that you're going to get those potatoes again the following year, you don't have to grow them from seed again. You can use the potatoes from your seed-grown potato plant to grow potato plants from seed potatoes, just like you would with any other potato. Or alternatively, you have the option to save seeds from your potato plants when they flower and produce their little nightshady cherry tomato looking fruits. You can collect those seeds and start a whole new generation of wild type potatoes in your garden. The seeds that you get from Botanical Interests are pelletized, which means that they look like a little tic tac. They're super easy to handle and to plant, and from what I can tell, I got 100% germination. The seeds you're going to get from your potato fruits are going to be tiny. They're going to be like poppy seeds. So you are going to have to deal with working with some uncomfortably small seeds if you want to grow future generations of potato plants from seed. But it's an option, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. The only reason you should seriously consider growing potatoes from seed instead of from seed potatoes is if you're just curious and you want to find out what it's like. There's no big benefit, and I've talked about several drawbacks. I'm doing it because The past couple of years, I've tried to grow potatoes from seed potatoes, and I've gotten terrible harvests. And potatoes are one of the easiest crops to grow. So there are two kinds of people. There's the kind of person who keeps on trying until they nail it down and they've learned something. And there's the kind of person who just like gives up and gets distracted and tries something new. And I guess we found out which one of those I am when it comes to potatoes. Maybe you learned something from this video, maybe not. Whatever the case, it helped pass a little bit of time on a cold, gray, dreary day that I can't get out in my garden and do what I really want to do. Thank you for joining me here in my garden today. I hope that you have liked this video. If you liked it, subscribe to my channel, consider becoming a member. Most importantly of all, have a wonderful time in your own garden. Thank you.